Were you always into plants and
Well, actually, I grew up in a cement city, and I didn't really have a relationship to nature because that's what happens for a lot of people of color, is that they get forced to live in places with very little nature, very little trees, and as a result, we don't get to access what is actually our human right, which is nature and green spaces. And so I didn't grow up with that culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think for a while the climate crisis was totally disattached or was viewed as something disattached from social injustice. Nowadays we realize that they're very much intertwined.
Absolutely.
How so?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm a living example of this. I grew up in a community in Oakland, California that was deeply impacted by the war on drugs. But there was something else that was happening which was very invisible, and that was pollution. I live next to a freeway that is one of the most highly transited freeways in all of the state, and that's the 880 freeway. And the 880 freeway is producing so much emissions that the level of toxins in the air is much more than the standard, and as a result, there's a lot of asthma, there's a lot of respiratory disease in my community. However, just a few miles up, where there's another freeway and there's mostly white families, they have prohibited trucks. And so my community bears the brunt of fossil fuel emissions. And that is climate injustice, which is really the result of land policies in which Black and Latinx people, indigenous people are relegated to the dirtiest communities where you can have pollution, you can have oil extraction, you have refineries, you have food deserts. And that's the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. And that's why I became an environmentalist, because I realized that at the core of all the injustices is really the climate injustice and ecological devastation, really.